I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the movie The Girl in the Pool, and I'm joined today by cast members Freddie Prinze Jr. and Monica Potter. And Freddie, I wanted to start with a question for you in terms of how you stepped into this character, because he's at such a specific place in his life and the emotional landscape of who he is. So I was really curious in how you kind of dove into the idea of his backstory and everything that had led up to the point of where we meet him at this precipice in the film.
Yeah, I actually knew a guy who went through like a terrible divorce, and it was on him, and we watched kind of just this one layer of insecurity that he had just kind of trigger this unraveling of his entire life, his whole life. We're not even friends anymore. He cut everybody loose because he hated himself so much and literally just tried to start his life over. So I tried to use insecurity as the main thing that would kind of drive this guy to a vulnerable place in the third act, vulnerability that he's trying to kind of hide from the whole time. So there's a lot of self-hatred, a lot of that second arrow philosophy, like you already screwed up, and instead of taking care of it, you're just going to punish yourself even more. So I looked for opportunities in almost every scene. In the first two acts, and in the third act, there were a lot of opportunities to kind of let that weak wall get smashed down and see what happens. So he's kind of a sponge in the third act, right? He just soaks up what everybody else is saying, and then we squeeze him at the end and see what happens. So that was kind of the philosophy on approaching him and completing him at the end of the movie.
That's so great in terms of the details. And Monica, I feel like your character is so on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of how she holds her stress and a lot of the things that she's going through. And it's a very opposing energy to Freddie's performance. So I was very curious how you kind of stepped into that and found the landscape of her.
Um, that is a good question. I think it was just minute or second by second. I didn't plan it. I just played off of him, which is really easy for me to do because he's awesome. And um, yeah, that's the only thing I didn't prepare. I mean, I should say something else, but I didn't. I just showed up and wanted to be supportive of him. And this was a huge role. It was a lot, not for me, for him, but he just nailed it and kept all of us kind of like centered, because I can tend sometimes to just be in my own world. So the character I think was more type A than I am. Yeah.
I mean, I love the detail of it just being a very instinctive performance and approach with that. And, you know, off the back of that, for the two of you, were
I
you
mean, I
kind
don't know
of
if it's any good. If I don't know if I did, if I'm not kidding, I don't know if it's any good. I'm not saying that. Like I just showed up and voila. No, quite the contrary. I don't know what I black out when I'm acting. I do. I don't like what? I didn't say that. Like I'm gaslighting everybody on set. I'm like, I didn't say it. What? I really don't like it's weird. But then again, I mean, I'll just follow people's cues. I hate that word. Are you gonna cue me? Then I run. I run for the door. Give me my cue. You didn't give me my cue. I'm like, oh, I'm out. I start flop sweating. No, yeah. But it's fun to just go back to work with someone like Freddie and Kevin and the whole cast, and working with Dakota Gorman, who's awesome. She's a
yeah.
great director and a good friend now.
Yeah. And with the two of you in building this relationship dynamic, was it something where you just kind of found that very naturally once you started shooting together, or were you kind of looking at what you felt specifically their rhythm with each other would be? Because when we first meet them, on the surface, things seem good. And then as the movie progresses, we obviously see there's a huge amount of cracks that have been building up over several years together.
I
Yeah,
think it's because I haven't
go
seen
ahead.
it in 20 years, so a lot has been built up. So everything was cracked. Go ahead, Freddie. Take it away.
I wasn't worried and didn't pre-plan anything as far as like a rhythm or a cadence with Monica. I've already worked with her once, and
You said that like
was it bad? Did I say it
no, the
bad?
way you said it was so good. I've already worked with her once, and
And you had
And
to do it again.
it was rough. No, what I was gonna say is, and I've said this before, she keeps you on your toes with your performance. Like she just said she blacks out, which kind of clears a lot of stuff up for me, by
You
the
know
way.
what? Watch it.
Because she can give you 20 different versions if there were 20 takes of a scene, whereas I kind of get locked into, a much more tightly fit one. And when you work with people like that, it makes you explore your own choices. And sometimes those choices can change. She's worked with some of the highest level people that have ever done it. And so when I see that, I'm at an age now where I say, oh, okay, I can be open to this. I don't have to be stuck to my own choices that I came up with, and let's just see what she does. So there was no planning because I've worked with her before, not in a sad way. But
Oh,
I I
it
know
was
how she
bad.
operates. I know how she operates.
Yeah, you do. And I don't discount yourself. I mean, you're high level.
Thank you. I was talking more about Robin though, and I'm not as high level as Robin. That's the highest of levels.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, don't do that to yourself. You are
You
there.
are, you are kind. Thank you.
I can be, but
Freddie, one of the things I find so interesting in watching your character is he's telling himself a very different narrative to the reality that exists around him.
Yeah.
And I've heard that Dakota, the director, said that she kind of envisioned your character as the gif of the dog with everything burning in the background, just going, everything is fine, and
Yeah.
that's what he's trying to convince himself. And so how did you look at the idea of what's actually happening to him against the narrative that he's trying to create for himself?
Yeah, it's funny you talked to Dakota about that because we spent a long time talking about it because it's such an insane choice to make, right? Like where, oh, well, once the party's over, everything will work out fine. Like there's zero possibility, zero chance for that to happen, but he's still convincing himself, just get through the party. If we get through the party, I can work this out. And he's
oh,
constantly trying to convince himself and eventually his son and eventually his daughter and his wife that I can fix this. And there's nothing to fix. Like the situation is brutal, and we just have to see if he's going to get lucky or not, because the choices he makes every single time for me are the wrong choices, just the wrongest of choices. And I loved that about him. And like I said earlier in the interview, it gave him an opportunity to be really vulnerable in the third act, when he cannot fix anything, when everything is falling apart and he's been completely sort of exposed as a piece of crap.
And Monica, in the film, your character's dad is played wonderfully by Kevin Pollak, and it feels like he's been very involved in their lives in a lot of ways. He even mentions at one point, I put the money down for the security deposit on your house when you guys were buying this place, and he very much feels entitled to have a lot of opinions about everything as well. And so I was curious about your interpretation of Kristen's relationship with her dad and how that's perhaps also influenced the way that she thinks about her marriage at times.
that part was interesting. That's funny you pick up on it because that was so foreign to me. I grew up poor. My dad was an inventor. So, and that's how we grew up. So we didn't grow up with money at all. It was the opposite.
Yeah.
So having like, oh, wait, you paid. Yeah, he paid for this. So you have to be. So she does. That was hard, actually, to play like a rich girl. I just thought of that. Thank you. I don't know why. Yeah, I felt uncomfortable almost. Seriously, like I might have to figure that out. No, I don't. Um, I felt that was the one thing that made me feel uncomfortable. Not Kevin, but that part of feeling like I was rich, brought up rich or something. I didn't even answer your question. You just got me thinking or feeling. I really don't know because when Kevin showed up, I couldn't keep myself together.
It's hard. It's
It's
really hard.
really very hard.
It's
It's
really, really hard.
really hard because I would look at him, and the only time that has really happened is when I worked with Robin, when he would do one thing with his face, and then I would go, and that
Stand-up
was it.
comics they're just brutal. They're assassins like that. They're just stone killers. He when we had that serious scene in the outside area, sitting on the crate where the body is, there's nothing to laugh about. There's nothing to laugh about. And he made me break every single take. Every single take. It's just, he's an assassin, an absolute.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. In a good way.
Oh God, I love him to death.
Wait,
He's
yeah.
doing a favor doing the movie. I've loved him since She's All That, man.
Oh, right.
I didn't even think about that moment for your character, Freddie, until this way just now when you were talking about it. But it kind of feels like that conversation that your character has with his father-in-law in that moment is the first time that he has any semblance of honesty or vulnerability, because his father-in-law is admitting, you know, I had an infidelity in my past and this is how it sat with me. And it's actually a very open moment that's very surprising between the two of them. And so do you think that that played a key part in him starting to kind of unravel and realize that he needs to approach things in a different way by the end of the film?
Well, Kevin and I discussed it as far as like how far we could go, because at the end of the day, they're sitting on a corpse. So it's hard to be completely vulnerable in that moment. So I tried to play it off later in the bathroom and allow that to be the thread that just kind of pulls and lets everything start to come out and get screwed up. It would have been harder to do it in that scene because I felt it would have given a little too much away. And then that would be like the father-in-law character being like, what? Why are you crying? I'm the one confessing. You know what I mean? So I had to play it a little bit tight, but he has to at least be open to hear the confession from the father-in-law. So there was vulnerability in that regard, but it had to be real limited. And Kevin and I even discussed that comics are the most vulnerable, right? Because they have to be on a stage, and if you don't like their joke, it's because you don't like them. It's not like a movie where there's 20 other things going on. It's a brutal art form. So talking about that kind of stuff with a stand-up comic is always beneficial.
Yeah.
Wait, he cheated on my mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, girl. He fooled around and it killed him. It's been killing him ever since.
So I'm gonna have to, what page is that?
That's 47. You're at 43. You're
Oh,
almost.
okay.
In working with Dakota as a director as well, you know, obviously the circumstances of the film keep growing and growing in terms of that scope. And I read something where Dakota was talking about wanting the characters to move through the story in a very grounded way. And I was curious for both of you, the experience in working with Dakota and how they made it feel very kind of intimate and grounded and connected when you were shooting all of your scenes together.
Dakota, first of all, I've never worked with a director that was more trusting than her, that was more receptive to ideas. Granted, I think my ideas are probably better now than they were in my 20s, with more experience.
You were gonna say better than hers, and I was gonna go,
Oh
whoa.
my God. No, I depended on Dakota. You know, her motivation for that grounding kind of gave me an idea where I wanted everybody to, or at least I wanted Thomas to move at a certain kind of heartbeat, at a certain pace through the scenes. So I prepared a lot of the scenes to music, and I would share those songs with her. I would share them with Herman, the producer, and even say, like, for score and things like this, I'm not saying this song, but something to this kind of beat, because that's kind of the pace that I'm going to be walking at, moving at, acting at, like through these scenes. And I really tried to prepare a lot of them to music, which I had never done before. But I thought it helped. As far as being grounded. Monica and I work really well together, so those scenes were going to be solid. I didn't have to worry about that. It was all the solo shit that I had to put a lot of time in. I told you on the phone when we spoke, I said I'm gonna lean on you a lot in those scenes, and that's why, you know what I mean. I didn't have to try as hard with Monica. I just had to be present with Monica, and then she can kind of affect me and change my ideas and change the way I saw a scene, or sometimes not. But it's just, she's easy to be there with because I already knew her, I trust her, I love her, all that good stuff.
Oh, I love you too. Well, that's why I said yes, because and that's simple as that. And we had fun, even though he took the heavy load, he lifted it all. I just showed up.
Freddie, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about with the journey of your character. When we meet him, he's obviously at the point where he's been incredibly deceptive and covered up a lot and told a lot of lies. but it never starts that way. It starts with one small thing that you say is a mistruth, and then it gradually builds and grows and grows. And so I was just curious in kind of your thoughts on how he got to that point and what you felt like that gradual growth had been of, oh, well, I got away with this and nobody questioned me. So now I know that I can do this, because it's quite bold even just to have his girlfriend over at the house where he knows that his wife and his
Yeah.
kids could come by at
So
any time.
super
Oh,
dangerous.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
super
really
dangerous.
bold, actually.
You know, I
Good
think he's the kind
point.
of guy that just doesn't have the discipline or constitution to say no to a pretty girl, right? I don't think he came up getting pretty girls in high school. I think he lucked out with his wife and Kristen. He knows he lucked out. I think he resents that. I think he resents the fact that she has money and he doesn't. And all that resentfulness, all that insecurity leads to one pretty girl who goes, "Oh, I think you're pretty too." And he just starts going puppy dog for her because he's not the alpha male. He's not an omega person, right? Like you hit on an omega and they're like, "Why are you hitting on me?" You hit on an alpha and they're like, "You damn right you're hitting on me." You hit on a beta and it's Sally Field going, "You like me, you really like me." And it's a hard thing for that personality type to battle. And granted, we're all three, but Sigmund Freud would say there's a dominant one of the three. And there's no such thing as Sigma. That's just YouTube bullshit. Sorry for cursing.
Wait, what?
That Sigmund Freud would say that that's BS, not an actor.
You're talking about brainwaves, or are you talking about?
Not brainwaves, personality, just personality types. But anyway, Thomas, being the beta personality, I think is really governed by compliments and criticism. When Kristen comes at him, you see how hard it hits. When the father-in-law criticizes him, you see how hard it hits. When he's complimented or rejected by Gabrielle Huff's character Hannah, then you see him, you know, the highs and the lows of that roller coaster, that push and pull, that she's just toying with him and playing with him, and he's not in charge of the situation at all.
I love that answer, and I really, really enjoyed watching you both in the film. So congratulations on the movie, and
Thank
thank you
you.
so
I
much.
love your accent, and you're beautiful.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
having us.